Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, dear friends of the MCI, dear partners of this distinguished guest online live talk, I'm pleased to welcome you to, as I said, a distinguished guest online live talk, and we truly have a distinguished guest. Let me please welcome Bracken Darrell, the Chief Executive of Logitech International for tonight, actually. Great to have you, Bracken.
Andres, it's great to be here. Thank you. Well, I'm here in California, but it's great to be on your program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bracken. Where are you now? You are in Newark, right? In California, Northern California?
Our offices in California are in a place called Newark, not to be confused with Newark, New Jersey, for anyone who's been there. But I'm in a little town nearby called Atherton, California, right near the San Francisco.
And it is early in the morning, I assume, right? If I'm not mistaken.
That's right. It's 8:30 in the morning, so it's not too early, but I've been up since a lot earlier.
Yeah, and we agreed, Bracken and I agreed upon a joint topic, which we thought may be of interest to our audience. And it is called, what does it take to become a leader? And if we go through the CV, the resume of Bracken, I think it is obvious why we have agreed upon such a topic. Bracken has long and extensive leadership experience. Would you mind, Bracken, to describe perhaps the most important steps in your career, what you consider to be the most important steps, and also perhaps connect it to leadership functions?
Sure. Maybe I'll go back before my career started. My earliest, I started out extremely shy. I have 3 siblings, and I was the one at the dining room table when we sometimes sat there who literally said nothing. And my older brothers, who were very talkative and intelligent, and my younger sister, who was very lovable and intelligent, took up all the airwaves. And I really just sat there and didn't say anything and just listened hard and tried to think of something to say so that I wouldn't sound stupid with my intelligent siblings. And but I also grew up very quickly, so I was about the same height I am now. You can't see I'm almost 6 feet, but I grew up very fast, so I was a big kid, and I was a good athlete, because I was so big mostly. So I became a natural leader in sports and things, and my mom was a teacher, so I learned to read very early, and I was pretty good at school. So I was kind of looked up to by my classmates in the school. So I had this. I probably got addicted to the concept of leadership very young, both on the basketball court and in the classroom, but I didn't deserve it. I never really led until much, much later. I would end up getting voted team captain of a basketball team or something, but I was really not good at it. And I thought I was, because why would they pick me if I wasn't? And even that carried with me all the way through many, many points in my career, which I'll explain in just a minute. And it wasn't really until I would say much later in my career that I would say I became a better leader. And I've still got a lot to work on. The key points in my career, I went to college in a small university and I majored in accounting. I majored in English literature, but I took enough accounting that I worked in that right out of school. I then went to my first job in international exposure was an internal auditor for PepsiCo, and I've traveled all over the world. I went back to business school then, and I came out and I went to work for Procter & Gamble, and I started over again, at about the age of 25 at the lowest job you could be in, like I had with 22 before. And then I worked my way through successive jobs till I was leading a business called Old Spice and did a big turnaround. And then when you lead one thing and it's successful, you get to lead a bigger thing. So I really learned there. I didn't have very many direct reports, but I learned how to lead a cross-functional team and to lead across very different areas, across every area you could think of, from packaging to product development to finances and everything. I left there after about 7 years and went to GE because there was this little-known CEO named Jack Welch, who was running GE, and I was a big fan of Jack Welch, and the job that I was going into reported to someone who who was potentially his successor, a guy named Dave Cody, who went on to run Honeywell for many years. And I thought this was a chance to be, kind of on the basketball court with Michael Jordan once in a while, which is how I thought of Jack Welch. So I went there, and I did get to meet with Jack Welch 4 times a year, and I worked for Dave Cody for a while. He was amazing, and I learned there, how to be tougher. GE is a tougher place to work than P&G, so I learned how to have more edge, and we could talk more about that later, and make sure that there's accountability. But I never felt comfortable there. I went from there after 5 years to do a turnaround of Brown, Brown shavers, and I moved to Europe, went to Germany, and ran the global business for Gillette at the time. It was Brown all over the world. There, I really learned how to lead in new cultures, and I was running a predominantly German team, but a very global team all over the world, and traveling a lot. And I really learned how to create a vision and drive to it. And then from there, I will skip the rest and just say, a few years later, this recruiter called me about this little company called Logitech. I'm not sure I really knew who Logitech was. Maybe I thought I had a mouse. And I took the interview, and the reason why I took it was because I was frustrated with my ability to get funding to expand Brown using design into new categories, because we had been bought by P&G, and I loved P&G. I came back into P&G, but I was very frustrated because I couldn't do my expansion plans because the gross margins weren't good enough. The business wasn't profitable enough for P&G. They liked what I was doing. They didn't like the outcome of doing it. And so I was afraid I would never be able to really fulfill the dream that I had, which was to reinvent Braun for another generation of people in new categories. And I ended up going to, with a stop in between, coming to Logitech. And at Logitech, I could fulfill my Braun dream, except with a new brand called Logitech, and in new categories that started around the PC. And I've been there now for almost a decade. It'll be a decade next month, and we've increased the value of the company 13, 14 fold, and sales have tripled, and profits have gone up more than that, and it's been an incredibly interesting time. And we have entered all those new categories. We've gone from about 8 or 10 categories to about 30, and we're just getting started. It's an incredibly exciting place to be. So all along the way, I've made more mistakes than anybody on this call, I can promise you. So leadership's not about doing things right. It's about learning from the things you don't do right or don't do well enough. And that'll be the theme of the rest of this discussion, I have a feeling. So I'll stop there, Andreas. I can go on and on about in any direction, but I'll let you ask me anything else that the various things you might want to know.
No, thank you so much for sharing your views, and also, allowing us to get insight into your perhaps also feelings. And you mentioned mistakes, and not many people talk deliberately about potential mistakes they have been making. So very, very grateful for your openness. Now, before we start into really diving into the topic, I would give some technical detail. Which is that our audience, which is not just students, but it is partners, it is alumni, and so on. And it is also, we have media partners streaming this event. So please feel free, feel encouraged and invited to send questions to me, and send the questions to livetalk@mci.edu. I repeat, livetalk@mci.edu, and the questions will come on my screen, and I will do my best to bring them in at my best, as said. Now, Bracken, did you always dream of becoming a leader, or did you always think this is what I want to do? Because many people more or less have a tendency, and which is very understandable, that they want to be specialists and stay specialists for a longer time, because then they have a knowledge which distincts them from others, which they have a uniqueness, which they know something others do not know. Whereas if you're a leader, actually, you are supposed to have people around you know more than yourself. And many people are afraid of that. I need to decide. I need to lead people who perhaps know more than I do. Isn't that a challenge? And how did you deal with this? And wasn't that something to be considered in your dreams?
It's a great question. So I guess if I started out a specialist at all, I was a specialist in basketball, and I was I was a pretty good student, but I was really, basketball was my first love, and I was on my path to greatness in basketball until about age of 14, when I stopped growing and those around me kept growing. And I went from being the tallest, biggest, fastest, best player on the basketball court to one of the pack who had to work really hard to be the point guard, or the one who plays in the front. And I realized at that point that this specialty is not gonna work for me. And it got me to question, what is it that I like about this so much? And there were two things I really liked about it looking back. I think this is what I felt. The first one was I loved leadership, because you could have such an impact as a group. And the second was I liked improvisation. I liked the idea that, you're going to have new things coming your way all the time, and you have to adjust, and you have to adjust as a team, not just as a person. So that combination of two things became sort of things that I always loved, and I still love, and I probably got better and better at dealing with both of them, the leadership and the improvisation. But it's really funny, before we started, you and I talked about the difference between being a generalist and a specialist, and I would say I've gotten to be more and more of a generalist and less of a specialist in anything, although I go deep in things. So I'm very interested in an extremely wide range of things, from physics to art to obviously the business that I'm in and everything else. But I find myself realizing now, the deeper I go into any specialty, I actually discover how little I know about it. And it's one of those counterintuitive things, that the more you learn about an area, the more you realize you really don't know about it. And I can go deeper on that if you'd like, but it's made me appreciate being a generalist even more, and realize that the greatest power that you have as a generalist is the ability to bring analogies from the specialties and cross them over into new specialty areas, like from physics to business, or from jazz to basketball, or from basketball to being a team leader, and when you in a business. And once I realized that, it gave me a great excuse, a great rationale, to fall in love with new specialty areas all the time. And so one of the great loves of my life is learning and going deeper in new areas on a regular basis.
Thank you so much once again. Now, Bracken, if we talk really about perhaps now specifically focus on the topic, what does it take to become a leader? What is it? Is it more the mindset? Is it techniques? Is it whatever? What does it take to become a leader? Would you want to share some key essentials with us?
It's one of those questions that you can answer so many different ways, and I'll give you my answer that maybe will be comfortable for everybody here. I think when you think of leader, you picture the general on the battlefield, or the coach on the sports field. But I would take those things out of your mind for a minute and just think of yourself. Just think of yourself for a minute, and then think who you are, who you are at the heart of it, where your passions are, the things you love, and then I think the most important thing in leadership is authenticity. It's being yourself. Everybody else is taken, so you might as well. You can admire other people for the things they do, and you can try to learn new skills, and you should always, and I still am today, all the time. But there's a core inside you that's hard to define to anybody else and even to yourself. But that's the most important thing in leadership. is staying with that core. Because when people meet people who have, who put that core out there all the time and express vulnerability about it and confidence about it, that's real, they're attracted to it. And leadership is partly about attraction. It's attracting people to the things you believe need to be done. So I think that's the number one thing in leadership is being true to yourself, to your values. The second most important factor in leadership, and it kind of it's a counter to the first one, is always growing. Is coming to your task every year, every month, even every day if you can pull it off, knowing that you don't know everything, and being the sponge that you must always be to keep that plastic brain of yours expanding and changing and evolving. You know, the world around us is changing so much faster than we realize. You know, if you really can imagine how fast the atoms are moving on the table in front of me, you'll realize how fast things really are moving all the time around us. And we all know that the world is changing faster and faster and faster. And the only way to keep up, or to even stay ahead, is to learn and to grow, and then to imagine a future that you think could happen. And if you do that well, that attraction of people to your authenticity will have a direction that people will be attracted to, and they'll want to follow you because they'll be excited about it. The third area of leadership is maybe the hardest, and that's the reality that you don't matter as much as everybody else does. When you finally realize that the most powerful thing you can do in leadership is unlock everybody else's potential, then you'll be a great leader. It's so hard because first of all, you can't just turn a key and unlock every person. So every person has a different key. Every person has a different lock, and you've got your little circle of keys, and you've got to find the right one that fits every person. It's hard. It's really hard early in your career. But once you do it, you'll realize that actually maybe the most powerful thing in the world is being able to figure out what key fits in which lock, what each person needs to unlock their own potential, how to overlap their passions with what you're trying to do as a vision. So those, I guess, are the three things I would say make a great leader. You know, it's really authenticity, learning, and unlocking others' potential as a passion.
If you look at, perhaps you have mentioned some leaders who have been, examples or good or benchmarks for you around you in your career, or perhaps you haven't even got to know them. But were you ever disappointed from such personalities when working for a longer time with them? And if yes, what was it? Was it a lack of authenticity, or what was it then?
You know, that's a really difficult question for me to answer for some reason. And it's maybe because I try to be very generous with other people for the things they don't do well. Because I have this mindset, and the mindset I have that I've developed over a long period of time is that, everybody can always improve, and we're all just a bundle of potential. So I've also always seen that in my bosses and my peers, my people, the team who works with me, and also probably in the leaders that are out there in the world. You know, I may be too forgiving of people's problems. So I would say the only times I've ever felt really disappointed in a leader were the very few times where someone who I felt had so much potential had an ethical lapse or a moral lapse that knocked them completely off their course. And it's happened to me every few years. I have someone either in my organization or someone I see from afar who is really got so much potential, and for some reason their ethics aren't up to the potential that their capability is, and it's just so frustrating to me. Even then, though, I'm super forgiving. You know, I quickly forgive and forget, And I recommend people who had ethical lapses because I know they've outgrown them. So it's not a permanent damage for me. But I guess that's the one thing that can really disappoint me.
Mm-hmm. I keep getting questions, and I now put my questions aside, or try to do so, at least for a while. And I just take them, I try to take them or put them forward in the order they come in. And one question comes, obviously the address, the email address is an MCI student address, and his name is Nicholas. And now I'll just read the question. I study environmental process and engineering, energy engineering, sorry, at MCI, and I'm currently initiating my bachelor's thesis. Now, two questions. How did the challenges of leadership in the corporate sense have changed in the last decade or two?
So Nicholas, I think the world you're coming into is so different from the world I came into, and the world that people who started 20 years ago came into. I'd say there are probably a lot of things we could talk about, but maybe the two that I'll focus on are, I think one is you're studying environmental science, and probably it's because you believe that we've hurt the earth, the planet, and we've damaged the atmosphere we're living in, and we did it with a different intention that was good, but with a byproduct that was bad. I think one of the realities of leadership today is that you have to be a whole. You can't just lead your business without as much regard for the rest of the world now. I think you have to view yourself in the context of the rest of the world more than ever. And one aspect of that, maybe the most important, is we've got to reverse the damage we've done to the planet. And I'm not saying we need to stop it, we need to reverse it. So we have to go negative on carbon for a while. We need to, companies like us, we need to find a way. We make 200 million things a year, we've got to find a way. So that's probably the one big one. I think a leader can't be a leader unless they see themselves in the context of the world now. You could be a little bit of an isolated leader before. Now, of course, you can do it on a very, very, very small scale, but you won't be on too small a scale for very long. I have a feeling, Nicholas, if you're here on this course and you're asking this question. The second one is, it's about people. I think, I think in my generation, it was easy to be a white male in anywhere in the world and have an advantage, and I didn't realize how much of an advantage I have, but I was very privileged all the way up, and it certainly gave me a boost that if you're a black male or a black woman or a Hispanic male or Hispanic woman or a LGBTQ or so many other underrepresented groups, a woman in general, didn't have the advantages I have. Now they do. And I think as a leader, when you come out, you need to celebrate that and foster that and love that because it's good for you. All we did was hold everybody back by holding a few people back. And those few people are now the majority of the world. And so they were never a few people. And you need to love that and realize that it's not a zero-sum game. The more each individual gets a chance to grow, the more the world grows and the more growth is available for all of us, including you, Nicholas.
Thank you so much. May I add a second question coming from Nicholas?
Sure.
And it is a very personal or quite a personal question. And it goes like, I imagine that such a big responsibility carries a certain burden. How do you balance your work and private life?
There's a lot of discussion around work-life balance, and it's a very stressful time for most people in the work world now because they're working from home. They've got the stress of COVID that's hopefully starting to wane, and they find themselves working longer hours and probably more hours than ever before, oddly enough, from their kitchens and dining rooms and living rooms and home offices and bedrooms. And so it is a more stressful time than I've ever seen in my career by far for people. For me personally, I am one of the lucky ones. Bless you. I'm one of the lucky, goes in fact. I'm one of the lucky ones that I've never felt like I was working very much, at least from, my first job, Nicholas, I did. Every Sunday night I was miserable because I knew I had to come in Monday morning and work. And I knew it was good for me, but I was really not feeling great about it. But soon after that, I found a way to get my mind wrapped around the idea that I could fall in love with anything if I just had the right mindset. So I started to love work, and now I can no longer distinguish work from non-work. And everything I do in my personal life seems to bleed over into my work life, all my passions. I can bring my passions to work somehow, and vice versa. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So I'm one of the very lucky ones. I don't feel stressed about my work. I don't feel an imbalance between my work life and personal life. It all works together. But I know a lot of people do, and it's easy for me to say that, especially as the CEO of a public company. And there's so many people in my company who don't feel that way. So my encouragement to all of them is make sure that number 1, 2, and 3, you defend your own health, your mental health, your physical health, and your happiness. And if you're not happy in the environment you're in, explain what needs to change for you to do it. And if you don't get that, leave. Easy to say, harder to do, but I believe that.
Bracken, are you sure you work with Logitech and not with MCI?
Well, MCI must be a magical place because Logitech is.
3 questions have come in from Mahinda Kari, who is a dear friend of our institution. He lives in London. He's Indian of Indian origin, and he supports us greatly. Okay. And Mr. Mahinda Kari asks the following questions. The one is, why are American CEOs overpaid as compared to other human beings in the world? What's so unique and extraordinary about them?
I think probably the overpayment of American CEOs is, which I agree with completely, including myself. It probably stems from a little bit of our celebrity culture. You know, Steve Jobs is a celebrity. Jack Welch is a celebrity. I think Jeff Bezos is a celebrity. I think we have a tendency to heroize the person most visible in things more in America than maybe most places. And I think that ends up getting reflected in our payment schemes and the way we compensate our leaders. And I think it is really a shame. It's also a competitive marketplace, and the leader does make a difference. So we end up, it's circular. You really do need to have great people in place. And I guess so. That's probably the most critical thing is that probably drives that. But I would say, I think the success of organizations is dependent on every job, and every job. I always think to myself, every job's about the same. We all have a job to do. I have things I have to do every day. My things don't overlap with very many other people's things. When they do, it's only because I need to make a decision that somebody else can't make because it crosses over into somebody else's lap. And so I think Mahindra's right that the structure around compensation doesn't make sense. And there are people around the world working on that. And I think it will probably get continually massaged and hopefully abated and even reduced over time. But, in the meantime, one of the questions you could ask me, Mahindra, is, well, then why don't you give some money back? Or why don't you, well, it's a tough one, because I could, but then I guess one of the theories I have for myself is, what am I doing with my money? So I give a lot of money to charity. I really invest in underrepresented groups as entrepreneurs, and I'm just trying to make sure that whatever I make that's extra, which is a lot, that I'm efficiently investing back into things, the values that I believe in, that also tend to overlap with what Logitech's doing.
Actually, my assumption was, but perhaps that is because I'm an economist, that in a large company, in a large market like the United States, in a large country, with large companies, it is easier to create economies of scales, allowing higher salaries. But that's a very rational explanation, and I'm not sure whether it speaks for me.
Well, it's interesting. Mahindra, I wish we could promote him to the panel here. It'd be a fun discussion. I really think if we thought of our companies as more like partnerships and less like pyramids, we probably would have a different pay structure. If you look at the pay structure of consulting firms and other partnerships, I'll bet you don't have the top person being paid so much more than the other people. It's probably much more balanced. And I think that's a better way to think about it. It's exactly the way I think about how I run the company. I think I have 23 direct reports, and I think of them as partners. I don't think of them as the pyramid that operates underneath me somewhere.
The next question coming from Mahinder is, what is the single biggest challenge you ever faced as a CEO?
As a CEO, I'm going to dodge your question, Mahinder, although I have faced many challenges as a CEO, but the most important challenges are the ones that you feel are the most important challenges, not the, so I think from a personal standpoint, I'm going to answer that question. And it was not when I was a CEO. My most significant challenge in my career happened very early in my career. And I had done this turnaround of one brand called Old Spice at P&G, and then I got promoted to an even bigger challenge, which was the pride and joy of P&G, the original brand. They were launching a new product, and it was supposed to kind of reinvent the brand and make us competitive with the #1 brand in the category. And I got moved in just a few weeks or months before the launch was supposed to happen. And the bottom line is P&G wins not because of great marketing. They win like we do at Logitech because of great products. And I looked at all the data on the product, and it didn't look like the product was better than the competition. And so I started to ask around, what people. I went to my boss and I said, I don't know if we're ready to launch because this product doesn't look better than the competition. And my boss said, "Oh yeah, it is. Here's the piece of data. If you look at it this way, and if you look at it upside down and the right side up, and you turn the page around, you hold it up to the light, you can see it's better." And so I said, "Okay." Then I went to his boss and I said, "I still don't feel good about this. I don't think our product's better." And that person gave me another answer that was very similar. If you stand on your tiptoes and you look over the fence, you can see that it's a little bit better. And then I ended up making my way to the CEO or close to the CEO. I don't know what job it was. And the person said, "You're right. If I look at this honestly, I think the product's probably about the same. But sometimes marketing and the power of marketing is so important that it can do magical things." And so I think we're ready to launch this brand. So I went back thinking at the age of whatever it was, 31 or 32, that these people all knew more than I did and that I should listen to them. We launched the brand. We lost $33 million, I think, in the first month. It was completely a failure. And it was 100% my fault, none of those other people, because I always could have said no. I always had ultimate responsibility as the brand manager. And I learned so much from that. So that was really one of the toughest points in my career. And luckily, it happened very early in my career. So maybe a few of you out there can live my mistake. We can talk more about failures and successes in a minute because I think it's important to talk about that with this audience. But that mistake was so valuable to me. It was worth a lot more than $33 million in value, not just to me, but to everywhere I've worked since.
Mm. Perhaps the ultimate question from Mahinder Kari is, what have you learned from other leaders, in particular from Vladimir Putin?
Well, okay, what have I learned from Vladimir Putin? That's a hard one for me, to be honest. I'm not sure I've learned anything from Vladimir Putin right now. I'm learning a lot all the time. If I really forced myself, Mahinder, I probably could come up with something. I would say if there's one thing to learn from Vladimir Putin, it's sometimes being transparent about your agenda is the most powerful way. Being not transparent about your ultimate agenda is the most powerful way to get what you want. I personally don't like that because I believe I love transparency. I love knowing what you're about, Andreas. I love knowing what Mahinder's about. So it would be almost impossible for me to do that. I'm not a good poker player. I'm not a very good negotiator. I don't like any of that. I would rather be honest, straightforward, put it out there. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I need. Here's what I want. What do you need? What do you want? So I don't know. Maybe I learned more about how much I value those things and not about the possible other thing to learn there.
Is it all right if I continue with questions, or do you want to bring in anything from your side, Bracken?
Well, I think it would be worth talking for a minute about failures. Since you made the comment that people rarely
Mhm.
talk about failures. I've felt that way since very early in my career. My first job, or second job, I tried to hold a panel where we bring or hold a regular series of talks. We'd bring in people to talk about their biggest failures, and it was very difficult to get big leaders to do that at the time. And and I've thought about that ever since. And I've always thought about, it's a shame because you learn so much from the things that don't work. And the longer I lived, the more I realized that what I really believe about this started when I was about 14, 13, something like that, maybe 11 or 10. My mom and dad divorced when I was very young. My siblings and my dad walked out on a Christmas Eve, and and my mom kind of fell apart for a year or two, and she had 4 car wrecks, and we were all worried about her all the time, and and she used to come home to me, probably to my siblings too, but I remember my situation, and second guess, think about, oh, I wonder if I should have said this in my work, or shouldn't have said that, or what do you think? She was so looking back and trying to rethink everything. And I remember saying to her the one time, and then I repeated it so many times after, Mom, I'd never been to a beach before. I said, Mom, imagine you're standing on the beach and you've got this stick in your hand, and you drag that stick right behind your heels. So you're standing right in front of that line in the sand. Everything back there is just to learn from. It doesn't matter anymore. It's 100% a learning thing. Your life is right here in front of that line all the way forward. So you live the rest of your life all the time, always moving that line forward. And you don't live in the past. And I cultivated that view over time. And finally to the point where I decided, you know what, actually, I no longer like the word failure. I also don't like the word success. I think they don't belong in our vocabulary. They should be replaced with learning. You have to risk manage your failures, or the things that don't work, or they can get you in big trouble. But you should not think of them as failures. You should, or your successes as successes. You should only think about them as learning events, like grades in school. How did I do? That's all they are. They don't say anything more about you. You start over again every moment right here.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Bracken.
Thank you.
Another question now from Peter Muski. Peter is a professor at the MCI, and he is the head of our IT initiatives. He's the CIO. So you maybe also be interested in being brought together later on after this event, because he's a very, very smart and innovative person. But
I'd
the
love it.
question. But the question he has brought up is, what are your thoughts about being a mentor to others in your role as a leader?
Um, well, I think mentorship as a concept is terrific. I know people who I think are very good mentors, not because I've seen them mentor or because they tell me they're good mentors, but because the people they mentored said to me, wow, that person's been an amazing coach to me. I've always struggled with mentorship. I'm both ways. When I've had people who are mentoring me, and especially if it was very formal, where I met with them every once in a while, I always felt so much stress about the meeting, getting ready for how to be mentored, that I don't think I ever really got much out of it. And then when I've been a mentor, I could never think what to say because the person showed up and they kind of expected me to mentor them, and they'd ask questions that they had stressed out about putting down, and I'm not sure that they got much out of it. And I always felt I didn't contribute much. So I don't think I've decided I don't really like mentorship as a concept very much, at least personally. What I do, if there are great mentorship relationships, and there certainly are, including for me, they're more like friendships. They're two-way, where you feel more like you're talking to a friend, and maybe they're just listening to you more than they're doing anything else and letting you think. And they usually go both ways, where both people walk out the door and say, gosh, I really learned something today, partly because the listener got to listen to you think through a problem, and you got to think through the problem with somebody in front of you who seems to care. So so I think maybe the word mentorship, I'm reinventing the English language now, so success and failure are gone in favor of learning, and maybe mentorship should be replaced with learning friends.
Mhm. Mhm. Isn't mentorship, perhaps I have the feeling, but I'm not an expert in mentorship. I'm just also feel a bit uncomfortable if I should mentor someone else or be mentored. How to deal with it. And but what I feel very comfortable about is just to ask questions. Now, who are you? Who are you really? What are your dreams? Where do you want to go? What do you dislike? What do you like? And so on. And try through these questions to support the person to find out about himself or herself. Yeah? But I'm not sure neither whether this is a good way to do. But I know that I feel uncomfortable with other approaches.
Yeah, I really feel the same way. I just completely agree with that. I think, in fact, I always thought I would be a really good coach, like because I grew up playing sports and I know a lot about the sports I play, even the sports I don't, and I'm not a sports junkie who watches the sports on TV all the time or goes to games, but I still play a lot of basketball. And so I always thought, growing up, I was the team captain of my teams. I thought I coached my kids' teams. I thought I'll be a very, very good coach, which kind of is like a mentor, right? And I realized a few years ago, actually, I'm a terrible coach. I don't do a good job. I'm not very good at that. It's probably because I don't put very much time into it. I'd much rather play than coach. I don't mind being coached very much, although I don't love it. But I would much rather people gave me freedom to create. And I'd rather give other people freedom to create and learn all the time through what some people would call successes and failures, but I would call just learning events. And so I think maybe giving people opportunities is more important than any amount of learning. Now that said, you're having this because you're trying to get people to learn from experiences that I've had. Maybe they won't make the same mistakes I did, or they'll stumble into some of the same things, ways of learning that I did. But I think the concept of mentorship is, there's nothing wrong with it. It's fantastic, and there are people who are great mentors, but maybe you should bring somebody else on to talk about that, because I'm not very good at it.
Once again, thank you so much for your openness. I'm not sure whether this is true what you say, but at least
I'm sure it is. I have a lot of confidence in that one.
Now, Mr. Christian Greil has sent me the following question. Dear Bracken, as you mentioned before, when starting with Logitech, you didn't really have any knowledge regarding computer tech. I was wondering, now Christian says that or asks that, I was wondering how long it took you to acquire that knowledge and how you went about learning the needed knowledge to lead your team properly.
One of the coolest things about being a CEO is you got all the experts underneath you in the organization chart. Or if you think of them as partners as I do, you're surrounded by the experts. You don't need more experts. In fact, the experts might have gotten the company in trouble in the first place because they knew too much. So I had this big advantage, coming in where I didn't know the tech industry. I didn't know the people who were in the company. I didn't know the strategies. I didn't know anything. And that was my big advantage. What I was a pretty experienced guy with a good common sense. And I really cared about customers. And so instead of talking to everybody else about how the business worked, I just talked to customers about what they needed and what we were doing. And sometimes I didn't talk to them. I just watched them or listened to them or listened to my kids. If it was I learned all about what we were not doing, not what we needed to do, or about the industry and what it told us we should do. And I think too often, you listen to you tend to try to feel like you tend to listen too much to the experts on the inside, not enough to the customer. I think just spend time with the customer. Usually the answers are clear. The real experts can translate that into what the technology needs to do. I'm an English major in the tech industry. I'm not alone. There are quite a few people at the top of tech companies who are liberal arts backgrounds. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the best background for it. It doesn't hurt. What I am suggesting is that's not the most important knowledge for a CEO is not deep tech. It's deep customer.
Mm-hmm. Once again, thank you very much. Now, Patrick Raudaschl, he works with Ivoclar and is an EMBA student at the MCI. And his question exactly relates to the former questions, to the questions before. Now, how important, Bracken, is a speak-up culture for you, for yourself? For instance, to tell the boss what's wrong? If yes, how do you foster, how to encourage such a culture?
I would say it is absolutely critical. It's not only critical to the boss, it's critical to the person on your left, the person on your right, the person in front of you, the person behind you, and the person below you. It's super, super important. It becomes even more important when a company gets in trouble, because what happens when a company gets in trouble is, the small group of people making the big decisions in quotation mark end up getting a lot of input, and they have to make calls, and those calls are usually debatable, and so people second guess them, and then they don't demonstrate that they're listening anymore because they've made their decisions, and then people don't talk about what they think you should be doing anymore. And suddenly one day you're sitting in your corner office alone, and nobody's talking to you at all, and you're just talking to yourself. That's a scary place to be. And that's what I walked into, I walked into the environment that had happened at Logitech when I arrived, and I totally understand how it got there. And I'm not critical at all of the former CEO, because it's very easy to find yourself there. But how in the world do you do that? Because, if you just sit around and ask everybody to complain all the time, that doesn't seem like a very constructive culture. It's hard. I think this is a tough balance. I don't pretend to be the best in the world at that, but I think one of the things that we're really working on now is psychological safety, which is, how do I have the safety to say what's wrong, in front of my boss, in front of my peers, to my direct reports, have my direct reports say it to me. I think these are really challenging things to do. And I think it goes back to a couple things. One is, be a good listener. Listen even when it hurts. And it really hurts the longer you've been there. I've been in my job for 10 years, and it sometimes it really hurts me when people say that the decisions I made were bad, but they were often. And I think if you embrace the idea that lying behind your heels is right in front of all this learning back there, then every time somebody says something bad, you want to hear it. You love to hear it. And in fact, that's the first question I ask people as I go around the company. I fly around the world. I always say, tell me what's not working, because I've learned to love those jewels. So I would say, as a leader, ask for what's not working. Ask for the things that are broken. Ask for what we should be doing better or not doing at all. And if you get yourself in the habit of doing that, you'll get used to the bad news.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not sure whether you want to ask a question, but I put it forward anyhow. And it comes from Martin Valentini. He is an MCI alumnus, and his question is, I think, a very important one. But as said, perhaps it may be difficult for you to answer it. If there would be one thing, Bracken, which you could change within your organization immediately, what would it be?
It's not that I don't want to answer that question. It's just that I've never thought of that. So I'm going to have to think for a minute to come up with the answer. If there were one thing that I could change in an organization immediately. Okay. I don't know how to do this, but it would be, if I could figure out how to enable all people to bring their passions to work every day. That would be amazing. Because when your passions are part of your work life, passions, the things you're passionate about, they help you overcome obstacles, because you have a passion for it. They help you dream of new levels of performance. So if I can figure out how to overlap your passions with what I do for a living at Logitech, I think that would be amazing. And I think there's a way to do it for more and more people all the time. You just have to be focused on it. So that's probably the one thing I would try to do. Mm-hmm. Boy, that was a terrible answer. I apologize. But it's true.
We'll get the feedback, but I assume it will be very.
I don't want to hear bad feedback. I'm sorry.
I think it will be very positive. Anyhow, Bernhard Baumgartner, he got his degree from IMD, his MBA, and he has been also a long-standing friend of the MCI. He works with a family firm. And his question goes like, why do you think that the Valley, Silicon Valley, is producing such a strong leadership in technology?
Well, I think it's a that question's been answered by much better people than me. I'll give you an English major's view of that and sort of an outsider's view of it since I've been here a decade, but that's still kind of young in the life of this Silicon Valley. I think it's a couple of things. I think it got started early because the Stanford and Berkeley and UC and many of the universities here ended up crossing over between the emerging, computer industry and entrepreneurship. And for whatever reason, there were early entrepreneurs here, like Hewlett and Packard and Steve Jobs, and those early entrepreneurs were successful because they were in the right place at the right time with the pretty good ideas, and that inspired a whole generation of people here locally, and inspired people around the world to look over here and say, wow, that computer industry is pretty hot. Well, a lot of it started here with microchips. And so I think that creation of this very hot industry that was created by entrepreneurs and then fostered by the universities and schools here that started to teach entrepreneurship, if it can be taught at all, or at least encourage it, that created this amazing kind of groundswell, this amazing reverberation of entrepreneurship that's just carried on and on and on. And it's spun further and further out from the computer to the internet to the metaverse one day. And so I think that's the real magic here. And the weather's not bad either.
Bracken, you said that you love learning. So what would you like to learn in this year or in the course of your future career? The question that comes again from Peter Mirsky, our CIO.
Okay, well, Peter, I'm never going to retire, so they will throw me out of Logitech at some point, but hopefully it's not for a long time. But when they do, I will go do something else immediately. What do I want to learn? I want to learn everything. I'm a learning machine. I love to learn. I'm not saying I'm a great learner, but I'm a very passionate, enthusiastic learner. I pick up new topics every few years. I want to go deep in, back to our specialty versus generalist topic. I've become I've got a real interest now in quantum mechanics and quantum gravity, whatever that is. So for example, I got really interested in art a few years ago, and I went really deep on trying to learn the history of art and what is art today and why is it so strange and how does it relate to the camera and all that stuff. And so I'm always looking for new things to learn. And I was thinking about curiosity because Andreas and I were talking about. I was saying Andreas seems like a very curious person, and I'm very curious too. And I was thinking the other day about what is curiosity. And I was looking in my backyard. I was walking across the house and I was looking in my backyard. I've got this kind of long backyard. And I looked out there and I could see that in this long green backyard, I could see this little red thing way off in the distance, kind of pinkish red. And I was looking at that thinking, I wonder what that is, because in all this green, I don't know what that could be. Is it an apple? Is it a flower? I don't know what it could be. And I was thinking, the difference between valuable curiosity and not valuable curiosity? Valuable curiosity, not valuable curiosity, is just wondering what that is. That's useless. That's not valuable curiosity. Valuable curiosity is walking out the door, walking all the way to the back of the yard, and discovering that's a flower. It's a rose, and what kind of rose it is, and asking yourself, why is it growing there, and then finding out. That's valuable curiosity. It's active. Curiosity that's inactive is useless, except as an intellectual exercise. But if you have active curiosity, it will improve your life over and over and over again.
Mhm. Thanks again. Elias Leubel, he is an alumnus of the MCI and he sends his question from Dublin. And the question goes like, I'm curious what Bracken thinks of China, as there are multiple competitors to the tech world, and in particular to Logitech, who produce cheaper and perhaps also pretty good products in quality. What is your plan, Bracken, to compete with this trend?
Well, we have a fantastic business in China, fantastic team in China, fantastic people from China who are running different parts of our business around the world. It is true that much of the tech ecosystem is different in China, and certainly we have competitors in China that we don't have outside of China. But because we've always competed in China and we win, our market share in China in most of our categories is as high as it is outside. We've had to be able to be more competitive. Now, it started years ago where we had to be cheaper, and then they went from just cheaper to faster, and then they went from just cheaper and faster to innovative. And so the Chinese competition has actually made us much better, including as an innovator. And so I would say what we're doing now is we're putting people in China, for China, working on China products increasingly, because I don't want to be sitting over here in Europe or in the U.S. when a local Chinese company gets so big on the back of 1 billion people, and then comes into my territory, and then I have to figure out how to compete with them. I'd rather be a Chinese company in China competing with them there, and so that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. Also very, very frank and open and authentic answers. Thank you so much. Now, I think we have been exploiting your time. I have some questions marked down before, and one is, you mentioned the word passion quite often or several times. And does passion, in your understanding, perhaps have something together with also being ready to suffer once in a while to achieve a goal, and because you really want it? Yeah. But I know that suffering has a very bad connotation, and actually this is what you do not like yourself, nor do you like that your staff members, your team around would ever suffer. You want them to have joy and like the job and so on. But how do you think about is there a relationship between passion and suffering?
Well, I think you mentioned joy. I don't think joy is a life without suffering. Joy is a life of fulfillment. It's a life of love. And anybody who's been in love before, and everybody has suffered. It's part of the love story of every life. And so I think a little suffering, not too much, is probably part of what makes us happy. Because with suffering comes learning about yourself, learning about other people, learning about the topic that's making you suffer. I think, it's a little bit like I'm sorry to relate everything to sports today, but, when you play basketball, sometimes I hurt afterwards, I'm sore, but, that muscle is broken down. It's suffering, but when it builds back, it'll be stronger, sometimes faster. I may be able to jump higher because I suffered. So a little suffering doesn't hurt. You just need to keep it in the right balance so that you don't feel like you don't let it get to your mental health.
Mm-hmm. Now, my last question, or is more an invitation. Is there any question you would like to put forward to myself or to us as the MCI? Is there any request? Is there any question? Yeah, just to put it vice versa.
I'll just to keep it interesting, I'll ask you a question. I'll make it a tough one. Education was created, the concept of education where we pour knowledge into people's brains, and it all happens early in your life, and then it's over by the time you're 22 or 23, and then you're supposed to move on and use it. That's a very outdated concept in a world moving as fast as we're in. I mean, people you have so much to learn the day that your student graduate walks out the door one day, relative to the past, just to be effective in a changing world. How is MCI adapting to that? Because education can't stop or even slow down the minute you walk off the campus or out of the classroom, even if it's virtual.
I'm not sure what I really can describe it in technically, but perhaps I can present you with a very personal picture to that. Yeah. See, my concept or my picture to this question is to find out where the students stand and where they want to go, and then say, okay, now the picture is that there is a rowing boat, and we are all together in this rowing boat, and we are here, and you want to go there. Now let's identify what we need to do, what we need to be careful about, what we need to be what do we take with us, what do we have to learn. But let's jointly go from here to there, allowing you to make your next step. Yeah? And there is, and we are all more or less this in the same boat, and it takes all of us to work together. It takes also the willingness to share your emotions, your goals, your thoughts, your fears, whatever. But actually to work in the team and help to each other, and also mentor us as professors. But jointly achieve goals. That's and jointly, work together and share what your feelings are.
I like that concept of education. That's a very healthy concept, that it's two-way all the time, and that it's about more than the topic. It's about your emotions and your fears, and I think that's really powerful. Well, I would get in your boat, Andreas, or you can be in my boat. Like you said, it's all the same boat, so we're already together.
Thank you so much, dear Bracken Darrell, Chief Executive of Logitech. Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. Also, thank you to all our audience to share your time, also to bring in the many questions, your openness, and also your thoughts to enrich this joint event. Now, we are coming to an end, and what I would like to do is two things. One is to thank our partners of this distinguished guest lecture series, which is the Association of Austrian Academics, the FÖWA, die Vereinigung Österreichischer Wirtschaftsakademiker, then Swarovski Company, then the Economic Society of the Tyrol, which is Volkswirtschaftliche Gesellschaft, then it is Studo, the Student Service App, then it is EU Valis, the European Commission, and it is First Lauer Sparkling Water, unfortunately not beer yet. So that was my personal statement. And to give a little overview about the upcoming distinguished guests, who is the first one will be Dieter Kempf. He's a vice president and was the former president of the Association of German Industries of BDI, Bund der Deutschen Industrie. Then we will be happy to welcome Maria Gabriel. She is European Commissioner for Innovation, Innovation, Research, Culture, Education, and so on in the European Commission. Then quite a sensitive topic, Charles Putchdemont. He is the former president of Catalonia and the leader of the independence movement of Catalonia, and he's member of the European Parliament. And perhaps now also related to this time of and what happens in Europe, Lech Walesa. He was the former state president of Poland, the leader and founder and leader of Solidarność, the lobbying association, and he's a Peace Nobel Prize winner, and more. So please feel free to check our website, and we would be more than pleased if you again joined our distinguished guest Livetalk series. Now, my final thank and a very, very warm gratitude goes to our distinguished guest of today, Bracken Darrell. You are in California, but you frequently come to Europe. Please feel free and feel especially very, very welcome at the MCI. We hope to stay in touch and to work together in the future.
Thank you so much. I will definitely do that, Andreas. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Also, thank you to our technicians, to our media people, to all who have been contributing to this event.
You're here.